Welcome to Owanapaedia, the one-stop center for Uganda's history and the history of the rest of the world. My name is Tony Geoffrey Owana, and allow me to adjust my attire because the story I'm about to tell says a lot about this kind of attire. As usual, behind there is Corporal Samuel Matovu's son, Albert Semiano, in this two-man unit, which is by the grace of God and your prayers doing these wonders. Today, for the purposes of telling this story, is the 20th of August 2020. And the story I'm about to tell goes back to August and September 1985, when the people who came into government shortly after the July 27th coup that overthrew President Milton Obote came in. Those who were around remember people dressed in all sorts of things, but armed, so you will not mistake them for lunatics if you wanted to stay safe and alive. The story we are going to tell is of the government of the Military Council, which was headed by President Tito Okello, effective 29th July 1985. The government was overthrown on 27th July 1985 and was replaced by what was called the Military Council. In those few hours, the person who announced the coup, that was the late Colonel Walter Kyora and his colleagues, were briefly in power de facto because there was no head of state. Then the coup maker, Brigadier Bazilio Olara Okello, also took charge of the Military Council for some hours. Then the Chief of Defense Forces of the Ugandan National Liberation Army, which had overthrown the government, came on the 29th, 2 days later, and took charge of the new government. That was General Tito Okello. So in those few hours, probably 48 hours, the country was either leaderless or in the hands of at least 3 different people. That's where today's story comes from. When that government was overthrown, the new government invited rebels who had been fighting Obote's government in the bush to come together and form a broad-based coalition government under the Military Council, headed by General Tito Okello. Quite a number of them accepted the invitation, and talks with the National Resistance Movement continued. But ultimately, the NRM did not join the Military Council. That will be a story for another day. But as of today, the 20th of August, permit me to salute the memory of the late Brigadier Gad Wilson Toko, who died on 18th August 2002 in a very serious motor accident in Kenya. But 35 years ago, he was the vice chairman of the Military Council under General Tito Okello. Uganda Television, which was the only TV in the country at that time, headed by the late Jamil Dean, whom we used to call Jim Dean, who many of you remember only in terms of motor rallying, but he was also a journalist and headed Uganda Television for some time as a director. He hosted the leaders of the Military Council to a show at UTV up Nakasero, where that wonderful Aya Hotel now is. And those who turned up for the interview are in this historic clip which we are about to show you. They were discussing the rumors that persisted in that some members of the new ruling Military Council had run away, and that others had been arrested, and that Museveni was about to capture Kampala. So the vice chairman, Brigadier Toko, who was also the Minister of Defense, came together with the new Commander of the Army, Bazilio Olara Okello, and the Minister for Information and Broadcasting, the late Dr. Michael Ojo Moloji, to clear the air. The panel of journalists you're about to see were led by, as I said, Jim Dean. There was Charles Willie Ochola, who is still alive. There was Peter Swilikei Kisa, who is still alive. There was John Owino, who is still alive. And there was Avua Lino, whose whereabouts and current status are unknown to me. Those of you watching Owanapaedia and who must remind each other to subscribe should help us find where Avua Lino is, because he is a big story himself in the history of broadcasting in this country. Now let's go back to UTV Studios Nakasero to look at that very old interview, which will show you what the situation looked like at that time.
Over the past few days, there's been a lot of confusion in Kampala, in the sense that a lot of rumors have frightened people away from their businesses and from their ordinary life, from the town running to the villages. For instance, today there was a rumor that certain members of the military council had resigned. As a result of this, a lot of people ran from town. Later, there was an announcement on the radio to say this was not true. Similarly, there have been a lot of rumors about various groups, for instance, the Anyanyas who have come into town, or the NRA who are soon coming into town. This has frightened all citizens. We are therefore honored tonight to have with us members of military council who are going to throw some light on some of these rumors and who are going to tell us what exactly is happening and what is being done by the military council to achieve safety for all the citizens of the country. In the studios with us, we have Colonel Toko, who is the Vice Chairman of the Military Council and Minister of Defense.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, viewers and listeners.
We also have Lieutenant General Bazilio Olara Okello, who is the Chief of Defense Forces and member of the Military Council. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, everybody.
We also have Honorable Ojok Mulozi, who is the Minister of Information and Broadcasting. And with me, we have members of some of the press agencies here in Kampala who are going to be talking to the members of the Military Council. I'll start with Colonel Toko straight away. Colonel, you have just returned from talks in Nairobi, and we are a little bit scared because there have been rumors that the talks have failed completely, and NRA and UNLA have not seen eye to eye. Now, what prospects do you see in these talks?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I must say that our trip to Nairobi was a continuation of a negotiating process that has been taking place between the military council and all the fighting groups. We have had in the past 2 weeks discussions with 4 groups. Namely, on the 14th of August, we met a group called FUNA, which stands for Former Uganda National Army. On the 16th of August, we had a meeting with the UFM, Uganda Freedom Movement. On the 18th, we met UNRF, which is Uganda National Rescue Front. And then on the 19th, we met FEDEMO, which is the Federal Democratic Movement of Uganda. Therefore, our going to Nairobi was to have a meeting with the NRA. I returned with my delegation yesterday evening, and as it has already been announced on the radio, the talks were adjourned to give both sides time for further consultations. I would like to emphasize this point, that the talks were not adjourned because we failed to reach any understanding. The discussions were held in a very brotherly atmosphere. We had 2 days discussion under the chairmanship of the President of the Republic of Kenya, and the talks will continue next week. So those who are spreading the rumor that the talks have failed completely and so on, I think don't wish us well for peace in Uganda.
Colonel Toko, can you give us an indication of length of time when you think you can agree with NRA?
Well, length of time I can't give you precisely, but we hope as soon as possible. As you know, the Council has made it absolutely clear that to have a lasting peace in Uganda, we must involve all forces at play. When I say all forces at play, this includes NRA. And let no Ugandan deceive himself or herself that by striking peace with one group only, you have solved that problem. I'm glad to say that 3 groups, or rather 4 groups, have come forward. They have surrendered their arms to us, as well as their fighting forces. But I would like to make one point clear, particularly in regard to UNLA and the FUNA. There has been a lot of rumors going on that Anyanyas are being brought back, or that Amin's men are coming back. Well, first of all, there's no such a thing as Amin's men or Amin's army. These people who are being called Amin's army started their career in the military even during the British days. They served under the British, they served briefly under the Prime Minister then during a self-government, Kiwanuka. They served under Obote, they served under Kabaka, they served under Amin, and some of them continued thereafter. Now, it's very strange for somebody just to pick out of all these one president and they say that army is his. Secondly, we feel that every Ugandan is entitled to live in Uganda in his own right. Therefore, our call to all Ugandans living outside Uganda to come back is a very genuine call to all citizenry. And we are very much aware that some years back there were elements in our national army that were not citizens of Uganda. And those are not the people we are welcoming back. I don't think the military council is so naive as to compound its problems by bringing back people whom we know very well had created a lot of problem in this country. Now, if amongst the citizens who are coming back, there are people who committed known crimes, and there's enough evidence to bring them to book, certainly the law will take its natural course. No citizen is exempted from this kind of behavior. So I would like to make it absolutely clear to the people of Uganda that you can't solve a problem in Karamoja and say in the Luero Triangle and leave fighting continues in West Nile. Or you can't just have everybody in West Nile coming back and solve the problem in Karamoja and Mpigi district and Mukono district and hope that the triangle doesn't form part of Uganda. Therefore, I would like the general public to look at the council policy in that light, that we are welcoming citizens back, and we want them to be law-abiding. And it is our belief that all forces at play must be brought into this peace process.
Well, Colonel, as much as you and I believe that the future of the Uganda continues to be the concern of everybody, there appears to be a state of conflicting ideas between the people and then the military council about your reconciliation program, where you brought back the fighting forces to be together in Uganda. In the case that a fighting group will not recognize the other one, that these are loyal, these are disobedient, or this nature, how are you going to reconcile these 2 or 3 fighting groups that are already laid down their arms?
Well, we had on 21st of August a joint meeting with all the different fighting groups with whom we have already signed a memorandum of understanding. In that joint meeting, all the groups recognized one fact, and that is that the cause for which they were fighting is no longer there. So that is one point. The second point is that they cannot disagree with each other because the cause is finished. They were not fighting amongst themselves. They were fighting a government which somehow did not live up to the expectations of these various groups. And now that that government is out, they have embraced the policy of reconciliation, forgiveness, and the call by the head of state for all Ugandans to come back. They are saying, well, the best we can do to bring peace in this country is to put down our arms and join hands with the government to build a new Uganda, a happier Uganda than we have had in the past. If there are elements of indiscipline, for example, amongst the various groups, there may have been cases where you will see there are troops walking in town in civilian clothes with guns. We've told their leaders that this kind of act should be stopped. And it is our intention to ensure that they behave like a disciplined force. And the same applies to UNLA soldiers. The government is doing its best to try and educate them to understand what the cause is for. The UNLA did not take over the government in order to punish the people. UNLA took over government to try and give something better for the people of Uganda. So they have to set the example to the people of Uganda that they really mean good. Occasionally, I know you will hear gunshots at night and so forth. I can assure you that these are not going off with the permission of the military council. These are some elements who perhaps after drinking at night, they go and they fire these guns. And we are doing everything possible to apprehend such people. Already I can tell you we have locked up a lot of officers, commissioned officers, and the men for misbehaving, including, among other things, refusing to return vehicles of civilians.
Maybe on that point, the CDF can continue with the question. The rumors going on in town that Anyanyas are controlling maybe a roadblock on Bombo Road, the INRA are controlling a roadblock maybe on Massacre Road. How true is that, the CDF?
I think all this area, gentlemen, is no one which I know is Anyanya, the one who controls that roadblock. Roadblock is, I've been calling that, controlled by UNLA.
Is there any presence of the NRA near the town who are controlling roadblocks, say?
I think here in
Kawempe?
In Brig side, from this side, they are together with the UNLA in the way of the road of Mtiana. They are there together. 400 of them. They are with the UNLA together. They work together. Concerned with this, talk of Minister of Defense with themselves, then they agree, which is no problem. Other from Mukono district. Yesterday I talked with their leaders. They go to regroup them. I think on Sunday I may go also to visit them. They are there in their position until we are finished with the NRA. So they will come to regroup their gun down, put their gun down, and we shall be in the time or in picture to pick a group of them to form a new army of Uganda.
Your Excellency, I would like to ask about the lawlessness being reported from Mukono in particular and Luwero. We received the reports that Mukono chiefs ran away and the police stations are not working. And people say that if there is a problem, there is nowhere citizens can go to report to. We have received further reports that in Fort Portal, NRA are in control of that area and that they have started appointing their own chiefs. Would you please like to comment on this?
Yes. First of all, the question of lawlessness. Following the change on 27th of July 1985, many local administration officials, including chiefs, took off. And the reason for that, in my opinion, is very obvious. The previous government appointed these persons politically. And they also had their youth who were supposed to be administering various areas or villages. With the change, obviously you can't expect their loyalty to suddenly shift from one leader to another. And what has been happening is that some of them took off, others who did not take off had some kind of jungle law administered to them. And this is because I think the public were rather bitter the way these people treated them. So they started taking jungle law into their hands. It's not the way that things should have been done, but that kind of report has been received by us. As you know, we have already appointed the Minister for Local Government, and he is in the process of streamlining the local administration in all districts with the appointments of various people. We hope that in peaceful districts will be accomplished as soon as possible. In the area where there is still fighting going on, it is true that has been a problem, and it will take time before we can straighten that out. As you know the English saying, where two elephants are fighting, the grass suffers. Obviously, when two forces clash, then the problem goes to the innocent civilians within that area. But I think it is important for the people of Uganda to understand what they really want. Do they want peace, And if so, are they able to analyze for themselves what is good for this country? It's not good enough to, go and shout at the first opportunity that you see comes along your way, and then tomorrow somebody comes, you again do the same thing. In the fighting areas, this has been a rather unfortunate situation. In Luero, we know that chiefs have been beaten up, and sometimes some people have been killed. But this is lawlessness by the local population, not by armed personnel, armed forces personnel. And everything possible is being done with internal affairs and the Ministry of Defense to bring control in these areas. You asked something about Fort Portal. I would like to make one point very clear to the public of Uganda. UNLA, since the 27th of July, has maintained a policy of peace. A policy of peace. And people keep getting reports that, oh, this has happened, that has happened, and so on. And they see we don't react. Well, we believe that the country has lost enough blood. The country has seen enough deaths. If we are going to react to some kind of situation that has come up in a very violent manner, then the whole peace process which we are trying to establish will be jeopardized. But that does not mean, as I've said before, that we are incapable of answering back if it becomes a question of answering back. So as far as our relationship with the NRA is concerned, we have all agreed to maintain a ceasefire while the peace process is going on. And I still maintain that they are not moving to our area and we are not moving into their area. I would like that to be very clear. So anybody who comes tomorrow to tell the general public in Kampala, run away, NRA have come, should not be fooling you, because there's no such a thing. There's no such a thing. Both sides are maintaining the ceasefire which has been agreed until the talks are successfully concluded.
But Colonel, if I may interrupt on that issue, there is still some rumors which you can clarify that UNLA soldiers are being disarmed some areas north of Kampala towards Gulu Road. What's your comment?
When did that happen?
I wouldn't exactly know when, but there is always that story that goes around.
I think in the interest of the peace which we are still pursuing, I would rather not answer that question.
Yes. But even still, when we are still on this peace process, would it be useful for the country to have roadblocks?
Yes, roadblocks, roadblocks are not meant for negative purposes. Even when there's peace in a country, roadblocks are maintained for purposes of apprehending habitual criminals and things like that. As you probably know, we have cleared most of the roadblocks around Kampala. Up country, I can assure you, if you drive in most parts of Uganda, there are no roadblocks. As soon as things improve, we will clear all roadblocks. The country doesn't need permanent roadblocks, but spot roadblocks are normal practice everywhere in the world.
Sulga?
Yes, I would like to ask the Colonel if you could probably, on this occasion, help to elaborate on what kind of framework is being employed, precisely in appointing members to the military council or members to the cabinet, because there is also this wavering that there is a stronger force maybe of people from a particular region or a stronger force of people of a particular category.
Well, I think it has been very clear that the military council advocates broad-based government. Even within the council, the membership is very broadly based. At the moment, we have, for example, the CDF, who comes from Kidugum. You have me, I come from Arua. You have Brigadier Maruru, who comes from Ankole. Kano Nanyomba, who comes from Usoga. Brigadier Okello comes from Tororo. You have Major Dr. Kweya, who comes from Gulu. And Major Luomo, who comes from Karamoja. So you can see that there's a very broad base spread all over the country. The other thing, of course, is that membership to the military council has certain conditions to be filled, which I'm not prepared to disclose here. These are, just specific conditions. But as far as the cabinet appointments are concerned, again, as you know, the proclamation is very clear that the cabinet will be appointed by the council on the advice of the prime minister. Points that are borne in mind, obviously, are political representation, religious representation, regional or tribal balance, and so forth, and the ability to accomplish a given job. So, without reading the areas or regions where various cabinet ministers come from, or without amplifying which political party they subscribe to, the principle is that we must spread as widely as possible.
To the Chief of Defense Forces, perhaps you could throw some light as to what the military council intends to do in redeploying the personnel, the armed personnel of the fighting forces who have now and are still coming back home. I take it that the number must be quite large, and it requires some plan to redeploy them somehow or other. And perhaps in this connection, if possible, you could perhaps explain as to what caused the removal of the Obote government by the military.
Gentlemen, reorganize of the military, that one I cannot go deep in now because we are still in negotiation with other group who has not come soon in. Let me go to clarify about to remove Obote. I think if I go back to 1971, all of us went in exile out, and when we came back, there was a meeting of unity in Mosi, which was get about 12 about 8 group who had been grouping there for the unity, including UPC also in. And when we come back here, we was have one front of fighting in UNRF. So after election, some other group also went to fight the same government who was calling UNLA. The UNLA really was not the army of Obote. That is army of Uganda. After that, the government of Obote get confused to divide the people in the tribes and also in the religions. And some wrong allegation against people of Uganda, individual, or in the tribes. So we thought, if we are continuing like that, it may bring a lot of problem. People may be fighting by tribes. As you see before you here, UNLA was fighting with five forces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and RA, who are still we are negotiation with them. But it's a UNLA alone. We have been rounding by all these troops around Kampala and someone others there. That's really come in our mind. Let us react to take action really quickly, and let us come all together to discuss this problem. We shall see how we shall finish all this. Addition of that, I think one day, I think last year in November, we was have a problem with some others country, as you know, SPLLA. There was agreement with the Obote himself out with the UPC government to brought those people from Ethiopia, because their base was in Ethiopia, and they brought them again to northern side. Which that area was my under command as a brigade commander there. But Obote, he don't want me to know what is going on. So all this we are creating to come the sixth enemy who can fight UNLA soldiers. That's why I decided to take action against Obote government. Our intention was not to fight ourselves. As you see the distance from Gulu up to Kampala, about 270 miles for 3 days. Because the soldiers were united, they already been realized as what had been done. That's why also it was occurred. You hear the attack of Buea. That Buea, there was another enemy there. There was disabled soldiers who has been lost their part of the body because of Obote. Not that one alone. There was also, Obote took some other soldiers from my brigade, from 14 battalion, 37 of them brought here in Kampala. Then there was one to mention that to make that one to be SS, I was make as an attempted coup, which I felt attempted coup, then they will get to continue to kill people. That's why we took that action. We took that action.
If I may just add something particular on the first point, the question of the army, the national army of tomorrow. You see, this is a very complex process. It is not possible for this country to absorb all the fighting forces into a new army. That obviously would be so huge that even our resources, financial resources, would not be able to maintain such an army. So when the time comes to create a national army, emphasis will be given on the size and the kind of quality, and it must be broad-based as well. I think I just wanted to add that.
This is an open question. Although people are happy that the army intervened on the 27th of last month to get rid of Obote, but another school of thought asks, why didn't the army intervene in 1980 during the general elections, if the elections were rigged by the then, president? I don't know if you would throw some.
Well, I don't know. That's a very complex question you are asking, but what I can say in this regard is that, first of all, you heard the CDF tell you that the army did not want themselves to fight. A national army of a country is not meant to fight amongst themselves. It's meant to defend the country against the external aggression. However, because of the political manipulation in the country, somehow they managed to split a national army into factional groups. And that resulted in making them knock their heads. As to why they did not intervene in the 1980 elections, I think you must look at the fact that the elections were organized by the politicians. And probably it was hoped that the whole process would be politically resolved. And when years went by, and then the signs were that another election would come, probably this time another political party would go to the bush. The army were tired of fighting a war of too many fronts within the country, hence the action they took. I must say it is a difficult question to go deep into.
Yeah, I just wanted to perhaps request the Colonel to intimate right now that the Military Council has taken the initiative to hold these talks, and so far they have gone very well. Memorandums of understanding have been initialed with, I think, at least 4 groups now, and the other group they are being discussed. What is now the next stage? Because the first stage is initialing of memorandums of understanding. What are the plans of the Military Council? And
I think that's a very good question. It is the intention of the Council to continue that process at various stages. Where we are now is that as soon as we have initialed memorandum of understanding with all the groups, then we will have what we call a peace conference. This conference will have representatives from all fighting groups. It will have representatives of elders from various districts and religious organizations and so on. At that conference, major issues affecting the future of Uganda will be discussed, and then it will be the conference to give a basis, policy guidance to the Council and its cabinet for implementation within the interim period when we are holding the fort, so to say, and preparing the country for civilian democratic rule.
When the NRA captured power on 26 January 1986, Lieutenant General Bazilio Olara Okello, who had been CDF, went to exile in Sudan and died of natural causes in Khartoum on 9th January 1990. 25 years later, the NRM government accorded him a befitting military send-off in his ancestral Lamo district on 14th February 2016. Dr. Michael Ojok Mulozi, who had been Member of Parliament of the Democratic Party for Nakawa, Publicity Secretary of the Democratic Party, and Information Minister for the Military Council government, retired and revived his analysis magazine. He died of natural causes on 8th April 1996. Owanapaedia will shortly unveil the story of General Tito Okello's Military Council government, and you will get a glaring insight into the true meaning of the widely used but little understood term, failed state. Let's remind you that this was a very tricky situation way back in 1985. Some of the tensions you are now seeing are just tensions among civilians who are vying for posts here and there, who are preparing for the next election. In 1985, around this time, it was about guns, guns and guns, people time to prepare how to remove the others and do this and do that. As this conference was going on in UTV, Kampala City had been divided into territories for the various armies and the rebel groups, but that will be a story for another day. Stay tuned to Owanapaedia and don't forget to subscribe so that you keep updated with the history of this country.